This is a Weather Impact Alert.
All right, good Thursday evening, everybody. 5 News Chief Meteorologist Skot Covert here. Wanted to give you a briefing on what we're expecting going into tomorrow. We have brand new data in, and I'll tell you before I get to that brand new data, I'm hopeful for what I'm seeing in this evening's data that may help mitigate some of our severe weather threat tomorrow. I'll walk you through the changes here in a moment. First, what's not changed. This from the Storm Prediction Center. If you didn't know, earlier this afternoon, they actually upgraded a large majority of our viewing area into a level 4 out of 5 potential of severe storms. That's the area here in red. It does extend largely east of Fort Smith, the River Valley, parts of Franklin, all of Johnson, all of Logan, all of Scott County, even a sliver of LaFleur County included in that level 4 potential. Now, the further west and east you go, we stair step down to a level 3 in orange, level 2 in yellow. So certainly the higher probabilities of severe storms tomorrow are going to be found in the River Valley, but that doesn't necessarily mean we won't see severe weather in northwest Arkansas. That's going to be a real possibility for us as well. The Storm Prediction Center, they issue these outlooks routinely, especially in events like this, right? And they make upgrades and they make changes to it. And what drives the overall upgrade that we saw today was the increased tornado probabilities that we have for the area. In fact, we'll start with that on the left side of your screen. This is going to be the overall risk zones. When you look at just the tornado potential, you'll notice it's going to be highest, generally speaking, east of Fort Smith. Parts of Sebastian County is included in that, a chunk of Franklin, all of Logan, Johnson, and Scott County. Now, that doesn't mean there's not a tornado potential in Fayetteville. I will say you get into Benton County and odds are a little bit better that you're mostly just going to see some rain. Could see some hail. That chance is there too. And then, of course, our damaging wind potential here on the right side of your screen. I'll step out of it so you can get an idea of what those individual hazards look like for your location. Coming up in just a second, I'll blow up the tornado potential there so you can have a little bit closer look at that. One thing to note, we are looking at 2 potential rounds of storms tomorrow. The morning round is going to be mostly dominated by elevated instability. Instability is something that you need, or storm fuel is what we sometimes just call it, our hillbilly language. And that storm fuel is primarily going to be elevated tomorrow morning, which means hail is our primary concern as you're heading out the front door tomorrow morning. It's the second afternoon round that has the potential of producing some tornadoes. This is the same map I just showed you. It's just bigger with regard to the specific tornado risk, so you can have a little bit closer look at it. We'll start in Benton County. Let's work our way down I-49 and through the I-40 corridor. Low potential in Benton County. A good chunk of Bentonville, Rogers, right, not included in any risk at all from the Storm Prediction Center. It would be kind of a fool's errand to look at the exact lines here and discern too much from pixel to pixel. I just think the key takeaway is for Benton County, chances are a little bit lower. And I know that's some good news for you folks there. And of course, I would hope that gives you a little bit of peace of mind tonight. We'll want to be mindful tomorrow of additional changes. I've already got some new changes to pass along to you. In fact, if you're just now joining us, here on 5 Plus, I'm walking through the things that haven't changed first. I do have some good changes that I want to pass along to you, changes that are giving me a little bit of comfort here this evening with the newest data that's just coming in over the last hour. Back to our tornado potential, those reds are going to correspond to a 15 to 29% chance of a tornado at any given point. And of course, that's going to be, of course, highest right here along and east of Interstate 40. Now, you get into the Fort Smith area, you still have that potential down to about a 10% chance, and you work your way west over towards western Sequoia County. It starts to drop off there as well. These black hash marks often trip a lot of folks up. Sometimes you get a little confused by the hash marks. Here's what they mean. It doesn't mean the probability is any less or different. Your probabilities are based simply on the colors that you see there and the corresponding percentages. The black hash marks, that's the Storm Prediction's way of telling us that should a tornado develop anywhere in these zones, it may be a stronger tornado. We're talking EF2 or greater. Most of our tornadoes around these parts typically are EF0s, EF1s, right? So these black hash marks indicate that could be a little bit stronger for us. My boss is texting me, telling me, hey, some folks might just now be joining us. If that's you, good evening to you. Want to get you set up with a briefing on what you can expect tomorrow. This is what hasn't changed. I do have some good changes to pass along to you. We're happy you're here on 5+. Let's talk about the timing. That's the number one question I get. It's the number one question I want to answer for you tonight. This is the overall severe weather risk timing for both Northwest Arkansas and the River Valley tomorrow. It looks kind of like a kaleidoscope there. There's a lot of colors, right? Interestingly enough, these colors correspond to the overall severe weather risk assessed by the Storm Prediction Center. So that map I showed you with the level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, this corresponds exactly to that. But what it does is it allows us to assess a time for those different threats. You'll notice that the level 1 potential 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the morning. We start to increase a little bit later in the morning to that level 2, brief period of level 3 there for the River Valley. And then we get into that level 4 potential where it is in effect for a majority of the afternoon into the evening. Here's sunset here. So really the moment of time that we're really going to be focusing in on those cells developing for that second round, being the second round coming in the afternoon, probably about 1 o'clock at the earliest. I think the threat probably ends a little bit sooner than 11 p.m., but that's as late as it potentially could go for us. So there is a situation, there is a scenario where we could be looking at some nocturnal storms. I really hate to see that. This is what we're looking at overall storm risk-wise, severe, that includes tornado, hail, and wind. When we look at just the tornado timeline for tomorrow, we can narrow that down a little bit better. It's primarily going to be 1 p.m. at the earliest, and we'll continue that threat through about 9 o'clock tomorrow evening. I'll tell you, I think we're probably, with time, meaning by tomorrow morning, I'm going to be able to tighten this window up a little bit better for you and give you a little bit better of a window, more precise window of times where that tornado threat is going to be the highest. Right now, it really looks like the afternoon into the first part of the evening. That's when we're going to want to be really mindful of some of these cells beginning to rotate. Here's where I start to have some good news for you. If you caught the 5 o'clock or the 6 o'clock newscast, I talked about that warm front. And the ability of that warm front to lift north would dictate how much severe weather we see or don't see. The data we had earlier this afternoon that I was presenting on the 5 and the 6 o'clock newscast brought that warm front dang near into Northwest Arkansas. So it had a big, large warm sector, which is what you would need to have these supercells develop and rotate. New tonight, I'm going to give you one piece of model data that suggests maybe that warm front doesn't make it as far north. That's some good news. Here's the thing that you got to keep in mind. These are just computer models. It's just data, and it's not perfect. It's not the gospel, and they change. Just because it's backing off that warm front, keeping it a little bit further south tonight, doesn't mean that overnight it may bring it back off towards the north. Garrett often would teach me back in the day a phrase: you live by the models, you die by the models. And the point of that is, still got to do some forecasting. We can't let the weather models and the computers do our job for us. With this said, I'm going to show you that maybe, just maybe, if this is an emerging trend, and we hope so, fingers crossed, maybe this is good for us. Maybe this mitigates some of that threat for tomorrow. I'm happy to see what I'm seeing in tonight's newest data. So we'll walk through this. Earlier, that warm front was way up here, and you can see, I haven't drawn it on here, but you'll notice it's that leading edge of the storm fuel. We only have marginal storm fuel at best making it to the area with this specific newest data. This isn't the gospel. It's one of hundreds of different models. It's one we use more often than others. It's called HRRR, High Resolution Rapid Refresh. It's a high resolution model, gives us a lot of fancy nitty-gritty details, and it refreshes often. So that's why it gets its name. 8 p.m. tomorrow, things are tapering off according to that one. When you look at Futurecast, let's walk through this hour by hour. This is going to be 1:30 overnight tonight. We're probably going to be quiet. I know there's a couple of spotty showers out there right now. Ain't nothing to worry about, though. By early tomorrow morning, I'm going to step out so you can see the timing. This is 6 a.m. in the morning. This is round 1. Keep in mind, this is primarily a hail potential, right? Certainly going to have some heavy downpours out there. I'm afraid for some folks it may be somewhat of a messy commute to work, and the kids are definitely going to need the rain gear out there tomorrow morning. And you might want to check in with meteorologist Stephen Elmore first thing right here on 5 News this morning, right here on 5+, or of course over the traditional airwaves as well. You don't want to send those kids out in any hailstorms. He'll help you track those and keep you safe there. As we advance in time, look at all that rain. This is 8:30 tomorrow morning. Certainly going to be an impressive precipitation event nonetheless. We could see some flash flooding. We've already seen some yesterday across parts of the River Valley. Certainly could see some additional rounds of that. Take it a little bit further, we start to see the thunderstorm activity push off towards the east, still impacting a good chunk of our viewing area, but it is making its way off towards the east. By lunchtime, we get a bit of a break in the activity. This is going to be a critical moment. late morning into the early afternoon. And I'm talking critical time that we're going to be wanting to watch the skies. Even though things are going to be quiet, this is where the atmosphere is either going to stay stable or it's going to destabilize. And when we talk about destabilization, it's that return of storm fuel. If you get some sunshine out there tomorrow, if I see sunshine breaking through, I'll tell you, my heartburn's going to start a little bit. We don't want to see sun tomorrow. Just one of those days we don't want to see sun. Yeah, so this is the moment we're going to be watching the satellite really closely. We're going to be stepping outside, taking some observations. This is where that atmosphere could get cranked up. By 1:30 in the afternoon, still looking at mostly quiet conditions, but you notice we start to see some of these cells begin to develop off towards the west. These are the ones that are somewhat discrete in nature, meaning they're kind of out by themselves. Those are the ones you have to watch the most. Those are the ones that are going to have the higher propensity to rotate, to produce large hail. These are those classic supercells that you see of in the movies or that are pretty common out in west and central Oklahoma. By 4:30 in the afternoon, I think we're probably in the thick of it if we are. You'll notice these cells still somewhat semi-discrete. They look a little bit better with this data than they did in the early evening data, meaning they're kind of more, I want to call it messy. It's a bit of a more messy storm mode. There's conglomerates or groups of cells, and those, while they very well still could be severe, and they still could produce rotation and tornadoes, when they start to fight against each other, they kind of rob each other of what available ingredients are present to begin with. It's when they're out on their own that they've got all those ingredients just to play with themselves. This is 6:30 tomorrow evening. Still certainly could be looking at a severe weather potential. It is certainly semi-discrete. I do think the better ingredients with this newest data may be off to our southeast, but again, that doesn't necessarily mean the data won't change and bring it all back. We just happen to be seeing a good direction with the data, a good trend. Let's hope that trend holds. That's my hope for us this evening. Still though, looking at strong thunderstorms through about 7:30, 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. These are slowly going to push off towards the south and east. It may take some time, but by 10:30, 11 o'clock tomorrow night, I think a lot of us are probably seeing some quieter conditions. We'll see a large emergence of rain return to the area by Saturday. Big flash flood potential for a lot of us Friday night into Saturday. Most of Saturday probably is going to be wet. In fact, we'll walk through a lot of that. We have a little bit of time here. That rain, as you can see, moves into the area 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Saturday morning. Wow. It's going to be a soaker out there. I know the Fayetteville Farmers Market's already kicking back off. You're going to have a lot of events out there Saturday morning. Weather is going to be a big role for you. This is a product we don't show a lot. I typically have some hesitation showing it. This is what's called our significant tornado parameter. What it does is it takes all of the ingredients that you would need for a tornado and it assesses how high they are. Are they coming together? Are they overlapping in certain areas, which would produce some more concern? With the latest data suggesting that that warm front doesn't make it as far north, you can see that the highest tornado potential may remain just off to our south. I just want to be really clear, and you find me coming back to it over and over and over again, and I want you to hear me say this. While right now the newest data is better than it was this afternoon by far, that doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet. These models are tools, they're just computers, and they're not perfect. We've seen that this week alone, where they're just not very good. They sometimes can be trash. This, though, is something I like to see this evening. It's given me a little bit of comfort, but I'm acutely aware that we can't just put all the stock into this one single computer model and go on about our business tomorrow and not be weather aware. So my fear tonight is I want to be transparent with you. I want to show you as much data as I have access to and give you some context as to what it means. My fear, though, is by showing you this one good trend, overnight tonight while we're all asleep, all the models could shift everything back north our direction, and then you may not get that information come tomorrow morning. So this is good. Let's just be careful with it, right? Information is good, information is helpful, but it's just that. Things can change. I still am expecting some changes. I hope, though, that the change continues, that front pushes off towards the south. Even with this newest data, that does keep some tornado potential in our area. It's just not as high as it was. Earlier today, some of these more moderate to high colors were well into parts of Madison County, well into northwest Arkansas. Right now, though, somewhat trending in a reasonable fashion. If you're just now tuning in here on 5 Plus, I'm walking through the changes to the forecast, what we know, what we don't know, timing, those things. So if you tuned in a little bit late, don't worry. I'm going to circle back and we'll do this whole thing from the top again. I want to talk about rainfall. Severe weather, of course, has been kind of top of mind for a lot of us over the last couple of days, but we haven't seen a whole lot of rain recently, and that's not necessarily a surprise. We've seen some. We've had a little bit of flash flooding. I don't want to disregard that, especially for the folks in Scott, Johnston, and Logan counties who dealt with that yesterday. but the bulk of the rain hasn't even arrived. That starts tomorrow, continues into Saturday. The large majority of the rain that's still outstanding hasn't even moved into the area. These are 4 different computer models, and they all have a little bit different of an idea of what's still to come. But what we find are some general takeaways that it looks like the further south and east you go, so we really get into the river valley. This is the GFS model. It's pumping out some, dare I say, outrageous numbers. I think this might be running a little bit too hot. It's a possibility that we could see 7 to 12 inches. I don't think it's necessarily reality, certainly hope not. The graph model, this is our in-house model that we run out of here at Channel 5. It may be a little bit more reasonable. 3 to 6 inches on average for a lot of us throughout the area. In fact, the more I look at it, the more I think that probably is a little bit closer. This is that high resolution rapid refresh model that I was using earlier to show you some of the other facets of this severe weather event. It says, generally speaking, about 2 to 4 inches on top. I think that may be running a little bit low, actually. And then the European model, which is a global model that actually generally does pretty good for us. It suggests anywhere between about 2.5 upwards of 5 inches of rain on top of what we have already received, and that's going to be running through Sunday. These numbers aren't all tomorrow, they're not all Saturday. That runs really through Sunday morning when things begin to finally taper off for us. Key takeaway is we're going to get some flooding. We do have a flash flood watch in effect. It's going to include all of the 5 News viewing area. Weather Service has already preemptively issued some small river and small stream flood warnings, places like the Mulberry River near Mulberry there itself. You got a couple of these other rivers. We're not talking Arkansas River flooding like what happened back in 2019. I know that is recent for a lot of us, and we all remember that. We're not talking about that type of flooding. It'd be flash flooding, small rivers, small creeks, streams, low-lying areas that are obviously typically prone to flooding. That's where we're going to want to be really mindful going into the next, let's say, 48 hours or so. To make matters just that much more interesting, this is such a powerful storm system that your eyes are not deceiving you. By Sunday morning, even potentially into Sunday night, there very well could be some flurries, especially across parts of northwest Arkansas. That's kind of wild. I really only point that out to you. It may not happen. It's possible. It's possible. I think it's going to be cold, though, and that's why I pointed out to you. If you got plants in the ground, you're a gardener, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, I think we're probably going to be looking at a frost and or freeze across parts of northwest Arkansas. So that's certainly something you want to watch for. Maybe you missed something critical. Maybe you want me to go over something a little bit deeper, or maybe you just missed the top of the stream. Let's start over. Let's walk through what's not changed and what has changed. There's been some good changes in the data tonight, I should say. The data tonight is giving me a little bit more comfort going into tomorrow. I was pretty concerned earlier this afternoon, and I will say I'm still concerned. But I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that's the great way of saying it. I'm cautiously optimistic with what I see tonight. Got back from my lunch break, pulled up the latest data, and I'm very pleased with what I'm seeing. Let's hope this trend continues. The big change that we're seeing, the warm front, which is so critical to tomorrow's severe weather risk, isn't making it as far north as it once was, according to one model. That's the key takeaway. We can't put all our eggs in that basket. All we can do is assess the information and hope that that information is, one, good, and two, that it doesn't change back. It could change back just as easily as it changed in our favor tonight. And that's the critical thing that I'm hoping folks hear me say with, well, I want to give you some good news, and I'm going to, because I'm going to be transparent with you about what I'm knowing and what I'm seeing. It also could change at a moment's notice. We get these models to come in every few hours. There's going to be more in the area overnight tonight. Earlier this afternoon, Storm Prediction Center upgraded a large chunk of the area to a level 4 out of 5 risk. So we're on the higher side of things, right? We're generally on 1s, 2s. At times we can get up to 3. Have been up to 3 this week, a time or two, but we don't always get up to the 4 level. But that's what's been issued here for portions of the River Valley. We do stair step down, getting into northwest Arkansas. That doesn't mean northwest Arkansas doesn't see severe weather tomorrow. I think that's going to be a real possibility for us. But certainly the further south and east you go, we really get into Franklin, Johnson, Logan, Scott, portions of Sebastian County. It's here where the atmosphere very well could be most favorable for severe weather. The reason it was upgraded to a level 4, it wasn't because the increase in damaging wind probabilities. It wasn't because of an increase in large hail probabilities, although both of those two are concerns tomorrow. The upgrade was made by the Storm Prediction Center when they started to notice our tornado parameters increasing in that same area. This is what it looks like here on the left. Coming up, I'll blow it up and you can get a big picture. a view of what we expect. This is our hail concern. I think there is going to be the potential for some hail, especially tomorrow morning, right? Tomorrow morning is the first round, and that very well could be severe in of itself. It just likely brings a little bit different hazards. I'm not too concerned with our tornado potential tomorrow morning. It's relatively low. It's not zero, but it's close to it. Our damaging wind potential looks a lot like this. So those are the three types of hazards. When we talk about severe weather, these are the three individual things that we're specifically talking about. Here it is, a little bit bigger for you to look at on that tornado risk view. Benton County, even portions of northern Carroll County, Delaware, and Adair, we're probably okay with what we know right now. Certainly if tonight's data that's trending in our favorable direction for a lot of us continues, Benton County is going to be sitting in an even better shape. Washington and Madison, we're getting a little bit closer to that axis of better storm ingredients, but not as high as perhaps it is going to be in Logan or Scott County, right? You get a little bit further into the Fort Smith community, we do have the potential for severe storms here. It's lower than it is just off barely to your east, but this is where I don't necessarily look at a lot of these lines. I like to blur them a little bit personally because Mother Nature is not going to necessarily just say, oh, well, I've just now officially crossed into that level 2, let's ramp it up, right? We know that's not how it works, but it does give you a general sense that if you're in Sequoia or LaFleur County, yeah, you want to be weather aware tomorrow, no question about it. You're going to be a little bit more concerned in, let's say, Johnson, Logan, Franklin, parts of Sebastian or Scott County than you are, let's say, if you're over in Muldrow, right? Again, don't take it necessarily as the gospel if you're in zone 1, zone 2, or 3, whatever it is. But I think the more favorable ingredients is what I'm poorly trying to say, is just here off to our east. What do these black hash marks represent? These can get really confusing, and sometimes I just take them off the map because I don't want to confuse anyone any more than they have to be. It doesn't relate to the probabilities of storms. You see these percentages up here. That's the legend, right, of what these colors mean. That's the chance of seeing a tornado within any given point in these certain zones. The black hash marks, that's the Storm Prediction Center's way of telling us your probability is not any different, but should a tornado get going in any of these areas where there are black hash marks, it very well could be a strong tornado. And a strong tornado is defined as an EF2 or greater. The majority of our tornadoes around here are generally EF0s, EF1s. What they're telling us is the ingredients coming together could support EF2 or greater. Not necessarily that your chance of that is any greater or less, but should it happen, should a storm get going, should it start to spin, that's what you would want to be concerned with. Let's talk about timing. Timing is the number one question I always get. Tomorrow is an interesting day, and I'll show you Futurecast coming up again here in a moment, in the sense that there is the potential of severe storms in the morning hours, and those very well could be severe by the definition of 1-inch hail or greater, maybe even some gusty winds, but it's the second potential that materializes in the afternoon that's really driving this upgrade. This is a new chart that Joshua Weisel created for us earlier this afternoon, and it does a really good job of giving the timeline in relation to that Storm Prediction Center outlook. You know, when I show you the map that shows placement of level 1, 2, 3, 4, we chose the River Valley to use for this specific chart because that's where the risk is going to be the greatest. Now, I understand in the Northwest we probably don't have as much of a risk, but for those that might be living in that level 4 zone, this is the timing of when you can expect things to really get going. Of course, we've got that morning potential there, let's say 6 through about 11 o'clock. There could be a bit of a lull in the activity. I wish there wasn't. If it just rained all day, we'd be in fine shape. We would really rob those storms of that storm fuel. If it stops raining late morning, early afternoon, sun tries to break out, starts to get warm and humid, then we've got some destabilization going on, and that's when this level 4 would materialize. Here's sunset, 7:42 tomorrow evening, so it's possible we have some nocturnal storms. Those are generally challenging because we don't have ground truth. While storm spotters can often use lightning to see what may be hanging down from the clouds, it's just tough, right? We don't have a good of a view of those storms to see if they are rotating, so we rely heavily on radar. Let's drill down to the tornado potential. This is kind of a timeline of what we would be looking at. You're going to notice that tornado potential starts to maximize, let's say about 1 o'clock at the earliest. That doesn't mean those storms are just going to see, oh, clock striked 1, let's go. But it gives an idea of when we would really start to be concerned. And that rotation potential probably continues through about 9 o'clock tomorrow evening at its highest. That's not to say that we might not have something later in the evening. We're going to be here watching it just to be on the safe side till radar's quiet. But it does look like that window for tornadoes tomorrow is probably going to be in the afternoon and and early evening. That's what my gut tells me based off of some of the data that I'm seeing, and certainly the Storm Prediction Center outlook correlates with that. This is where I have a little bit of good news for us. It really earlier this evening when I showed you the storm fuel map, which is a proxy, if you will. It's just a way to look at where that warm front's going to make it. That warm front made it well into northwest Arkansas, and it was going to be everybody south of that warm front that saw the potential of severe storms, and that's why we started to see some alarming data coming in. Tonight's newest run of this specific model, it's one of hundreds. It's just one that we use more often than not, and it comes in pretty quick. It's suggesting that warm front may barely even make it into the southern portions of our area. That would be great news. That would be really, really, really good news. And that's why I feel a little bit better tonight than I did when we were talking on the 5 and the 6 o'clock newscast. I'm hopeful this holds, but I'm acutely aware that this is just one computer model data, and overnight tonight, it could shift things back north. So I would suggest to you this, number one, stay tuned to the forecast. Watch us in the morning. Pull us up on Facebook. Stay here on 5+. We'll have updates with what the overnight data suggest. I'm probably going to set an alarm just to wake up and get a check of what's going on. So I'll probably put some information out there for you on Facebook as well. We'll update the website article on 5newsonline.com. Right now, though, this is good. Let's hope this holds. This is really, really hopeful news for us. I'm cautiously optimistic. That's the term. I'm not convinced it's going to be the case, though. Okay, cautiously optimistic, not convinced. I'm hopeful that this is going to be the case for us. This is about 6:30 tomorrow morning. These storms, they kind of look gnarly, and they very well could be. This, though, is more of a hail potential, right? This is that early morning hail potential. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, if this is anything close to accurate, we've probably got a messy commute. Wouldn't hurt to try to get to work or school a little bit early tomorrow morning, especially if you have an early meeting or something. It could be wet out there. Could have a little bit of hail in these storms. Meteorologist Stephen Elmore is going to be tracking those closely for you. That round of rain and storms pushes off towards the east. By 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, we've still got some rain and probably some claps of thunder out there, but we start to see a break in the action, a bit of a lull in the activity. This is that critical window in which we're going to be looking outside. I guarantee you my eyes are going to be glued to the satellite, and I'm going to be going out in the back patio, and I'm going to be seeing, are the clouds breaking? If we see sunshine tomorrow, that's adding fuel to the atmosphere. The warmer it is, the more humid it could get. That's that storm fuel being created almost in real time. Now, if the clouds hold and keeps our atmosphere from warming up too much, that could potentially be some good news for us. Doesn't always mitigate the threat entirely, but it would be a good thing. Sunshine tomorrow is going to make me nervous. Sunshine tomorrow fuels our atmosphere. Here's 2:30 in the afternoon. We do see that next second round, the afternoon round that's materializing, coming together. Those isolated discrete cells are going to be a little bit concerning for us. Those move into the area afternoon hours for us, into the first part of the evening. And even with the new data suggesting the warm front doesn't make it all this far, that doesn't necessarily mean we don't see any severe weather at all. That's not the case. But it does suggest that perhaps these cells aren't as organized. Maybe their potential to become really strong isn't actually materialized in a sense that it would if the warm front actually did make it towards the north. So we watch these really closely. These are the ones that would have the propensity to rotate should they get going. And they continue through 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10 o'clock tomorrow evening before things are starting to wind down. We'll get a bit of a break late tomorrow night. We'll rest easy, but we have that next round of rain that's going to be widespread and it's going to be heavy. Moving back towards the north Saturday morning. It's going to rain a lot Saturday. The bulk of our precipitation, the reason we're concerned with some flooding, really arrives tomorrow and into Saturday. Things slowly begin to taper off come Sunday. So we're going to have to really watch for some flash flooding potential. That's a concern for us. If you missed this, I don't generally show this on television a lot, but I felt a little bit more comfortable that you and I could spend some time talking about the nitty-gritty data of this map here on 5+ tonight. And I can explain what it is and why it's not always the perfect thing to look at. The tornado risk map that I'm showing you is actually called the Significant Tornado Parameter. STP is what it is. And it's an algorithm. It's a big, fancy, long equation that's taking every single potential ingredient that you would need to create a tornado, from dew point to wind speed to wind shear to temperature to storm fuel to lapse rates and cloud deck heights, all of the atmospherical ingredients. And it's saying what's there, how high are those values and where do they overlap the most? And you can generally get a pretty good idea of where the tornado parameters are most violent, are going to be the highest. Here is the leading edge of what this model depicts as the extent of that warm front tomorrow afternoon. Again, earlier this afternoon, when I was showing you that data on the 5 and 6 o'clock newscast, these colors were right on top of us. So you can understand why I was pretty concerned and still maintain a high degree of concern, really. But you can understand why the fact that these aren't making it even anywhere near us anymore gives me a little bit of hope that maybe tomorrow might be trending in an okay direction, but I'm not sold yet, right? Still have a ways to go. In fact, there's going to be a moment tonight, overnight, where we're not going to look at these models anymore. We're not forecasting. It's going to be nowcasting. We're going to be actually just tracking that warm front all day long tomorrow. You better guarantee my eyes are going to be glued to that warm front and how far it makes it. That would keep the severe tornado potential in parts of central and southern Arkansas. And while I don't necessarily love that for those folks, I would be really happy if it didn't make it this far north. So 9:31, you've heard me ramble for about 30 minutes now. I suspect there's a good chance we'll be seeing a lot of each other tomorrow. And so here's kind of the plan. And then I'll see you guys here at 10. The plan is that if any warning at all, a severe thunderstorm warning, which is where a lot of these warnings often start as, if that's issued, we're going to fire up the stream, of course, here on 5+ first. We'll get things going over on Facebook and YouTube and our website and our mobile apps so that no matter where you're at, you're going to be able to get us. I talked to our boss. I talked to our general manager, Van, today, and I said, Van, I'm pretty concerned with the severe weather potential tomorrow, so I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. And he agreed. Can we turn off all the ads on our mobile app and here on 5+, so that if a warning is issued, you're straight onto our coverage? And he agreed. He was very happy to. And so, Van, thank you. I want you to know that's what you can expect from us tomorrow. The full team's going to be here. We plan for this, and we'll track these storms. We've gotten through a lot worse. We'll get through this. Ain't going to be no thing. But if a warning's issued, the streams start, and we're going to be on until the threat's passed tomorrow evening. This is a really good place for us, 5+. If you don't have it downloaded on all your TV, smart devices, do so. That's probably where we're going to find a lot of coverage tomorrow. Meteorologist Stephen Elmer is going to do a similar briefing about 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, just like what we talked about here. He'll have the latest on that warm front. And I'm telling you, that warm front's got my attention. I want to know where it's going to be tomorrow. I want it to stay south. We all want it to stay south of us. If it starts to get towards us in the north, then we may have problems. So, all right, that's going to do it for this weather briefing. Thanks for logging on. I know you got a lot of things you want to do tonight. My job is just to keep you informed and prepared ahead of the storm. So I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, I'll be active on Facebook tonight. Hit me up over there, and I'll do my best to help you out. Hearing from a lot of school administrators, heard from some emergency managers today. So I know there's a lot of things being considered and decisions that are needing to be made. So happy to help in any regard I can. For now, though, that's going to do it. I'll see you right here coming up, oh gosh, about 27 minutes from now on your 5 News at 10.